the deed automation, and some of the interfaces. And if I may, I would like to turn it over real quickly to Troy Aries. He's our Director of Technology, and maybe just talk about some of those particular highlights.
Yeah, so so this is for the current year?
For the upcoming year.
For the upcoming year. So some of the priorities that we're looking at, Mr. Chair, members of the board, some of the priorities that we're looking at right now are API integrations. You know, bringing that CRM together with AA Gamma and allowing them to communicate with each other. And also we're looking at some integrations with the Treasurer's Office to resolve some of the issues that we've seen with addressing. There's a lot of different addresses out there, and we want to run some type of solution that will allow us to push that through USPS or whatever standard to get the address data that's coming into our systems clean for both of our offices. The other one that we're looking at right now is something with the Treasurer's Office, the deeds process, doing some AI machine learning to bring those deeds in as they're scanned and take all of the data off of them, digitize that, and then have a human element that can get it from 80–90% confidence levels up to, you know, high 98%. That right there would be a huge savings for us. We currently take those scans and have people that are manually entering that data into our system, and I believe the Recorder's Office is doing the same on their end.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I do want to commend Troy, because I asked him to be here in case you had any specific technical concerns, and so he did that on the fly as I was losing my voice, so thank you. Yes. So we also wanted to give you a view into what we're looking at over the next couple of years after that, and that's where you see years 4 and 5 as well. Continuing to automate those processes and making that more seamless, so it's not simply just an email to case where then we have to have a clerk that turns around and enters that into the system. We want to ultimately personalize those customer experiences. And right now, for example, an ag application or someone who has agricultural status on their property, if their lease is expiring, we send out a letter notifying that their lease is expiring. Not everybody responds to that in a timely manner, and the penalty of that is pretty huge. We'd like the ability to repurpose some of our time that we're spending in data entry and be able to make personal contact and, again, personalize that customer experience a little bit more.
You're after my heart, aren't you, on that?
It's mine, too.
Well, you know...
Well, because we've had that before. When I first took office, there was so many farmers and backfilling. I didn't know it ran, you know, it expired. So thank you for looking at that. It's a lot less phone calls to you guys.
Yeah, and one of the wonderful things that we did was it last session or 2 sessions ago, where now, because of the ag property owners, you know, they may not be reading their mail from us, right? So now we've implemented state statute that all the assessors at least has to send a certified mail if some change is going to happen. You know, at the last moment, you'll get something from us, you know, so that you'll at least be aware of something like that. So.
And just utilizing ag as an example, we are trying to do more outreach as well. And so we've met with the Cattle Growers Association, Farm Bureau. We're trying to reach out to representative areas in those particular areas. Ag is just such a great example of this because it's such an easy thing to fix. If we get the documentation, we can approve it to continue on. And working with Senator Kerr on that particular bill, we heard horror stories of folks that were afraid that they were going to lose their status. They hired an attorney. They paid tens of thousands of dollars when it's something that we can fix for free. We're not trying to hold back anyone's ag status who's eligible for it. We just need the right documentation to be authorized to process it. So we have just a little bit of a roadmap here that we wanted to use to create a visualization here. As we were looking to go live with the new system, we talked about what would need to come after that. And again, you know, moving forward with the system, that it's a fully normalized database, which makes it great for accessing the data. But the amount of data is just astronomical. I believe we migrated over 1 billion records over from the old system, and that's just the active years. So with 1.8 million parcels and accounts, all of the records that go along with each of those, it becomes quite a challenge to manage that data. So there's a number of different things that we need to implement to make sure that we're doing that well. Troy talked about those APIs, those interfaces that allow our different systems to talk to each other. So when we talked about the forms that someone can fill out online, that goes through that Salesforce system. We can actually create those interfaces so that it goes right into our workflow and then is processed in a much more timely manner. We're not there yet. This is our roadmap to help us get there. This is also by automating those processes, by curating the data, and we'll get into the data architect here in a moment, having the ability to engineer and curate our data so that it is accessible, that we can do real-time analysis in a way that we're not able to do right now. We had a meeting just yesterday with some of the county staff regarding some analysis that would be incredibly helpful on a legislative item. We have the boundaries, the legal description of the boundaries that were suggested. We're able to actually create those layers in our GIS system. We have the data in our system. We need the ability to access that data and query it out according to those parameters, and that's what we're looking to build here. Through a number of different things, and the APIs are going to be a very big part of that. We also want to make sure we've created that customer portal that didn't exist before. We're continuing to optimize that and look for ways to make that a smoother exchange for our customers as well, but that's also going to be an emphasis for us this year. And Troy, was there anything that you wanted to add in terms of our digital roadmap?
No, I think the big focus with the digital roadmap is API integration, bringing all of the systems together so that way they're talking to each other. We have a great CRM, Salesforce backend that, we're going through the case on there, and if we trigger an action within that system, it could create a record change within a gamma, which is something that we're currently missing, right? So now we have to make the record change in one system and then go over to the other system and make the same record change. So big focus on integrating systems.
And that actually assists us not only in terms of workflow and efficiency, but accuracy as well. Anytime we can avoid doing dual data entry, anytime we can make sure that our systems are automatically talking to each other, that's going to improve our accuracy and our ability to serve our customers. One thing I did want to bring up, because we've been talking about that CRM, the Customer Relations Module, we've been working very closely with OET, and as we implemented that, Ed Winfield, Michael Miller, and their teams have been absolutely amazing partners to us in making sure that we're making good choices, informed choices there, and proceeding in a way that would be consistent with what the county plans to do in the future.
I'm smiling at Ed back there. Thank you, Ed, for that.
He's an excellent resource.
You might be asking for a big check in the future.
Yes, it's out of the assessor's budget.
So here we do have the one position that we are requesting for as an above baseline. This is a data architect position. I can tell you we were looking at resolutions the other day, and we're trying to work with the treasurer's office to get this functionality up and running out of our new system. Anytime a split occurs, a resolution has to happen with that too, to basically distribute that, what the tax burden is across those parcels. So it's a change to those parcels in that sense. One of the concerns that I have is other resolutions that occur might be a tax refund that is due, and we want to make sure that we're able to process those in a timely manner. I bring this up as an example because as we're looking at how do we develop these resolutions out of our new system, again, a deliverable that we have to learn how to report out on, we're getting inconsistent results. So we're really having to dive in, understand the data, figure out how to cross-reference it, and it's inconsistent, right? Our data itself is inconsistent. We have years and years of data that's been entered that we want to make sure we can curate and clean. But just in terms of our structure, it's also inconsistent. Our centrally valued property has a different format than business personal property or even unsecured personal property, which is completely different again from real property. So making sure that we have all of those things tied down and the ability to correctly access information and report out on it is a really big priority for us this year. As we looked at those resolutions, we were literally, all of us who are not experts in this area, having to look at that back-end code and find in this string of numbers and letters, there's the value. So how do I get it from this place into this place over here? And then how do I cross-reference this to be able to acknowledge that this is a dollar district as opposed to an assessed value district? And so this is a skill set that we desperately need to ensure that we're able to continue to provide exceptional service.
Just a quick question. How difficult do you think it'll be to fill that position? Seems like that'd be a very limited.
Well, every business is looking for the next generation of data architects and AI architects. I mean, it's such a hot market right now for them. So it's not who we can fill, how can we find them? Because they're in such demand right now. So.
Your question, Supervisor Sellers, is actually quite timely. One of the, as we've looked at revitalizing our agency and reflecting the work that's actually being done, we've had a position over the years that's we refer to as a CAMA modeler. It's computer-aided mass appraisal, and it's regression modeling. So regression modeling is common in throughout every industry. But when you recruit for a CAMA modeler, you really are restricting yourself to the assessment world. Other county assessing offices throughout the country, maybe if you can attract somebody to Arizona. What we've recently done is we reviewed the work that they're doing. We've recognized that we really depend on them for more than just the regression models. And for those who've ever done regression modeling, saying just regression models is maybe a misnomer, but expanding that and looking at other business analytic tools. For example, if we had site selectors that wanted to look at Maricopa County and be able to compare 6 parcels and find out what the effective tax rate would be on it, if we could make that incredibly easy, they might not always come here, but they would always look at Maricopa County. So our goal is to be able to put forward tools like that, to be able to answer questions like the county manager and her staff had of us yesterday, to be able to answer those without spending days of time to filter through and figure out how to process that data. This is a position that can help us do that. The reason I say that that is timely is in recognizing that we need to do more than regression models, we've actually reclassified those positions to be data scientists and with a principal data scientist. And we have a series of steps. We have a data scientist, a senior data scientist, and then the principal data scientist. So just yesterday we were doing interviews for the senior data scientist, and we were interviewing PhDs from Fremont, California, also in San Francisco. Apparently we're attracting the Bay Area. But we are seeing that when we acknowledge the work that's being done here and we try and recruit it in a manner that's not reflective maybe of traditional government speak, we're having a much higher success rate.
And one of my dreams is my home improvement calculator for the public. Because as we know, when you improve your property 15% higher than your full cash value, it will trigger a Rule B, which will reset your LPV, which could potentially make your property taxes go much, much higher than it was the previous year. So if I had this tool for the public to use what we'll call a home improvement calculator, where they can say, I want to improve so much, they can know kind of maybe their boundaries and their limits before they can trigger a Rule B. So having someone like this on my team would help, create that tool for the public. And it'd be a first of its kind out there. Just thinking, things that we would like to do for the public in a positive way from the assessor's office.
So we have lots of ideas of ways in which that might benefit us, but ultimately it comes down to our ability to transform data into actionable information so that we all and all of our customers can make informed decisions. Also working with Ed and his OET team, we're taking a look at GIS. GIS, our Geographic Information System, this is something that is done through a consortium here. There are 29 member agencies. Maricopa County is the lead on that. We're one of the largest consumers. So as we look at, as we went out to bid for the overall GIS services, we ended up separating out the services for the oblique imagery. Oblique imagery, in a nutshell, instead of a straight on looking directly over the house, it gives you an angle. And that's important in a variety of different ways. At its most basic for our office, it allows us to determine the difference between a covered patio and air-conditioned space so that we're not overvaluing a property. We also have areas of the county where we don't have current imagery. And recently, when the assessor and some of our staff went down to Gila Bend to assess some of the flood damage, we recognized that there was an industrial building that hadn't been there and we hadn't picked it up. We hadn't gotten the permits on it and we didn't have imagery on it. And we want to make sure that we're picking up these properties in a timely manner, not just because we want to make sure that we're fairly and equitably taxing everybody, but the impact to the taxpayer if we pick it up late means that they may owe 3 years of back taxes. So it's very important to us that we get those on the books in a timely manner. One additional fact here, when we look at the oblique imagery, we have some sign-in licenses for some of the administrative work we needed to do. We used those about 88,000 times last year. Our website, though, had 1.9 million views of our oblique imagery last year. And one of our primary users was 911. So our dispatch for 911 actually references those to help our first responders make entry onto their property. So this includes the images. It also includes continued access to all of the images and the historical images on their web server. Contract and license increases. We have some standard increases here. We've spelled it out specifically so that you can look and see what each of these are, not just the bottom line. But the largest one that you'll see there is the Azure, and those are our cloud services. That's for our new Gamma system. And last year, we put together a rough estimate working with OET and our vendor and our Microsoft consultant to see what would be a good starting point for that. Our bills that we have to date for this fiscal year are actually through September, so we should be getting any day now our last quarter bill for the October, November, and December, which is when we actually went live with that system. What we found, though, if you think of it as a pipeline, we have so much data that we really need to keep that pipeline open, especially when we're processing things like our abstracts that take every single parcel and put that together into a cumulative summary of the assessed value of our jurisdictions. So there are times in which we need to keep that wide open to about 80 core. There are other times, and we're going to have the ability to manage this ourselves here come July 1st. By contract, this will be going into our own environment. We'll have the ability to manage that. And this will give us the ability to actually, when things aren't so busy, we can actually shrink that down a little bit. So in terms of the bandwidth, we'll have a lot of flexibility there. The other component to the charge here is the consumption, and that's basically the number of transactions, number of times that we're touching that system.
Any questions?
Right.
It would be great to get a letter from some law enforcement agency saying how much they access that to keep their people safe. If you think about fire departments knowing what they're going to walk into just by accessing the Maricopa County website, you know, or somebody needing to have access to a building where a bad guy is and knowing exactly what that is going to offer, I think that's fabulous.
And I think so what's interesting about that, and we can certainly provide something to that effect, I know we actually just pulled our #1 user, and our top 5 users, and 911 was at the top of that list. A lot of that can be the alarm room in Phoenix, where they're dispatching all of fire for the valley. I know when I was at Paradise Valley, our dispatch was also utilizing that. So I don't know that our dispatchers realize that, because it's almost seamless, because we create that interface, or we meaning my prior we. We would create that interface for the dispatchers, so they're using their system, not realizing that it's tying into Maricopa County data. But we could certainly look into that.
Well, it's something our taxpayer probably has no idea about.
Right.
And it's a public service that you guys have stood up to the point where it keeps people safe. So
Again, on top of that, we should figure out how to collect royalties, because there's many commercial businesses that use our website that design landscaping, that design solar panels. I mean, they love the free services of their, the taxpayer dollars are doing for some of those other things.
I wish the last chairman would have figured that out.
Another revenue source. But I get many, many compliments about how wonderful the website is for a lot of those purposes. So it's being used from a public service perspective in many, many aspects of that. Well, again, it's very much a thrill to be part of the Maricopa County team, and I thank you for all your support for our offices for, in a couple of weeks, it'll be 3 years that I've been here. It's gone by too fast.
It's been a heck of a difference
Too fast.
with you and your staff, Eddie, as you know. I think the board has been, now Tom is seeing,
Yeah.
he didn't live through some of the bad old days. He's just used to
The good
great
days.
service and a great staff. And so it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for
Yeah.
bringing as you promised us, bringing your skill set to this division has really panned out for the
Thank you.
county. So, okay, thank you.
All right.
Oh, by the way, John, you can punch him in the ribs, he took 6 of your minutes. Can you do it?
He's taking more than that from me.
Mr. Treasurer. All right. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. YouTube is back on? Good. Are you guys okay?
Can you share that at home with me? I'll try to figure it out. Yeah.
Fabulous.
You ready for us?
Treasurer Allen, it is always a pleasure to see you.
Well, we haven't done anything yet. You might want to wait.
No, I know that you're doing great things too. So if you want to introduce your staff, and thanks for being and joining us today.
Yeah, for the record, is green on? Is that, okay. For the record, I'm our Maricopa County Treasurer, John Allen. I have with me Jordan Dale, my Chief of Staff, who Ingrid and I stole from the Finance Department. So somebody keep an eye on Cindy Gels to make sure she doesn't come and get me. Yeah,
Don't worry, she's keeping an eye on you.
yeah.
With this presentation.
She also knows my wife, so that might be double duty today. I'm going to give you a quick spoiler alert. We're not asking for anything over base, and I know that, but I'm a good politician.
I'm going to say,
I'm a good politician, so we would like to spend 15 minutes explaining to you why we're doing that, why we're not doing anything new. So I'm going to let Jordan run the show, and I'm going to do color commentary, and we'll get through this pretty quick.
welcome, Jordan.
All right. Welcome, Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We are pleased to present our FY 2024 budget request. So first, we would like to start off with just some of our office's accomplishments. First, we collaborated with the Assessor's Office and Recorder's Office. We had our front counter staff have several meetings with one another to understand shared processes. We've also had meetings with the Assessor's Office on some of these shared items, so people gained a more holistic understanding of a process from beginning to end for these different processes which cross between departments.
And as you know, the three of us get along very well, the three amigos. We can't understand why he has such better parking than the other two of us. I mean, I park next to somebody who says, I love Levine. When you get out with that crowd, you're kind of far out there, but otherwise we're okay, you know?
Supervisor Gallardo is not here to defend Levine.
You shouldn't miss meetings, that's all. But yeah, he's ahead of two of you.
No one's ahead of me.
No.
Go ahead.
It's just our running little joke we always go on them.
Additionally, in our prior meetings, we had discussed that our office was very paper heavy, that we discovered bankers boxes upon bankers boxes of documents. We're proud to say we've been moving towards OnBase, the county's document repository. Our leadership estimates that approximately 80% of our legacy documents have now been scanned and indexed, which is great and makes our information much easier to find. But additionally, for our current state processes, we are producing much less paper. We're putting things directly into OnBase.
And look, in boxes, it was almost useless. I mean, it was really a chore to find anything. Now it's just electronic files. We can cross-reference through several different mechanisms. And we're attacking this. And you guys bought us those machines. They weren't cheap. And we can keep them in the county when we're done with, I think we have two of them. I think we'll be done with one probably in this year. And then we'll keep the last one for things that should have been scanned but weren't sort of activities. But we probably can move it around in the county and get more things into digital form. And we're going to try to lead out of this office with that. We don't bring in documents unless we're absolutely forced. We want them all electronically. We went to the sheriff's office and went through the affidavits that were backed up over there and digitized those. And we're trying to come up with processes so that we don't have to take those anymore in paper. We're just being aggressive because the future is here, you know, and Iron Mountain is a lot easier to store digitally than in files.
Additionally, we took on a project to look through all of our office's inboxes. We had 22 email inboxes, and we were able to consolidate that by removing 5. Additionally, we've gone through all the different inboxes to look at our response practices, create some standardization with how we approach that to provide the best possible service to the taxpayer. Then Treasurer Allen alluded to this a little bit. We have eliminated the backlog of affidavits with the Sheriff's Office. There were 3,600 mobile home affidavits and also 2,600 commercial affidavits. We cleared through all of them and got over 6.6 million in property tax abated. So now we're happy to say we're current and we're keeping up with the incoming workflow.
Some of them are really old.
We also, as part of the 301 building renovation project, we had several moves where staff had to pick up and go to a different location. And this really just spoke to the resiliency of the Treasurer's Office staff. We had people in temporary spaces. Treasurer Allen and Ingrid shared an office for a little bit and didn't go crazy. We had staff temporarily in the Santa Fe building. We're happy to say we're now in our permanent location. We love the new renovated Suite 100 and 1050. Part of the renovation design was we used to have a segmented front counter where on one side you've got your research folks, and then once you get your research question answered, then you have to go on the other line to talk to a cashier. We've combined that so all those functions are together to create the most streamlined process possible for the taxpayer.
And they did have different seasons. So we had 5 people watching 3 people work hard. Then the season would change and we had 3 people watching 5 people work hard. And now we're all cross-trained. We also have the way the new countertop is, we have a bigger space that leads into the office space. So people can just lean over and ask regular research staff to come over and help with some of the trickier cases. It's been working out real well. And everybody seems happier. You know, it's one of those things where the day goes by quicker when you have work. And so it's worked out well.
And backup.
And backup, yeah. And we've made it very clear, you're not here by yourself. Nobody's struggling alone. And so we have very good counter people.
We have also re-implemented the Treasurer's Advisory Board, which is where different members of the leadership team are able to discuss with our portfolio manager our different investment options, broker-dealer activity, as well as reviewing the investment overall performance. We're working on creating a recurring one-page summary that shows what our interest earnings have been and provides other information about our investment selection.
And we're reconciling that account every night, where the past treasurer did it once a month. The interest earned and distributed, which never got reconciled, and which we landed up clawing back 18 million. Thank you guys for your patience. We now reconcile completely once a month. To give you an idea of how the market's changed since I've been there, the end of fourth quarter in 2021, we brought in $13 million in interest in that quarter. This last quarter of 2022, 40 million. Now, some of that I'd like to say is my great management of money, but a lot of it we have to thank Biden. President Biden has run interest rates up and ran the bond markets into a much more lucrative thing for county and other governments to deal with. So I'll take it where I can get it. I'm a genius, and maybe he's not.
After the canvass of elections, the ballots are delivered to the Treasurer's Office where we store them in our vault. We are happy to say that since the time Treasurer Allen took office, we have significantly increased the security to our ballot vault. We've added numerous security cameras and also alarms to ensure that we are having responsible stewardship of those ballots.
And we have enough space to take the next set of ballots whenever they get here with the other ones that came so late. So we don't need any extra room. We've already jockeyed the ballots around, so whenever they get released from the recorder's office, we have the space for it, and we can get the other ones out again when their time comes, which should be in August of this year, for destruction, without having to touch the current ones that are in there or any of them. So we have plenty of room. It took a little bit of math and talk, but we've been very proactive about it. I know I like to joke. I will never joke about ballots. We treat this most seriously, and we will keep them within the statutory limits in which we're directed. We follow the Constitution. They're safe. I don't have access to them, nor does any other elected official. That we have redundant systems in place so that not only does it electronically show who's in there, but we have the cameras that every time somebody enters the room, takes the pictures while you're in there. So they're safe, they're locked away, they're happening to them is what's supposed to happen to them and nothing else.
Treasurer Allen, just, I don't even know if we're supposed to do this, or it's a vault. It's a vault.
Yeah.
All of it, there's quite a few of us that have. Oh, sorry. There's quite a few of us, with our businesses, vaults, safes, all that. When it comes to the ballots, is there a segmented area from one year to the other year? So if someone's there, they're with that year,
Yeah.
not into the other year.
Well, no, it's all one big room.
Okay, it's one big room.
But it is broken up into the different elections. So we have the presidential preference ones just went out, right?
Correct.
And they were just recently destroyed. We have the primary ballots there, and then there's a space. Then there's the general election ballots, and as they mature, we move them out in those groups.
So with the cameras, you can keep a footprint and know exactly what's what.
And no movement of these ballots is not, it's done in a prescribed way with the recorder's office. Nobody guesses at what they're taking.
Okay.
It's very clearly marked, everything is completely accounted for. It's the old clipboard, take now that one, now take this one. And they don't sit anywhere unattended,
Okay.
Between here and the destruction and all that sort of stuff.
Perfect, thank you.
A couple months ago, the Auditor General presented in this very room to deliver certain findings for the county. One of the recommendations they provided was the taxpayers' information funds be put on the county's accounting system. In the past, these transactions were not available to staff in the Office of Budget and Finance to review. We have since changed that. In fiscal year 2023, we're happy to say all of these transactions are treated like any other fund for a county department, and they are fully visible because we want to create that transparency. And then
The history of that is well understood by most of the board, maybe, but they were spending it on things they should never have.
Mhm.
They never let you guys even see what they were doing with it, and that's all over. That's just done with. It's not appropriate. It's not trustworthy, and we won't play that game.
Then the final accomplishment we would like to share is that we have been meeting our own internal milestones for our various IT system upgrade projects, which we will be discussing in later slides. Additionally, we are meeting OET's health checks and getting strong reports on that. We are meeting our targets, and we would like to continue to do so with effective planning. Okay, now for some goals going forward. We really want to follow in Workday how there's the SMART methodology that we want things to be measurable. We capture a lot of data in our office. We would like to start leveraging that data in order to effectively make management decisions and track our progress continuously.
We do the call center, Star Center, and every month we get what was last year, what's this year, all the data spelt out. We do not track data that well in my office. And it's some of it has to do with our operating systems, but some of it has to do with we just haven't had the bandwidth to be curious. And now that we've got the office in better working shape, we're now starting to collect data and trying to make more data-driven decision-making. And mostly because we want to improve the product for the taxpayer. We want to anticipate the places we're having problems by following the data and alleviating that. If you're waiting on the phone for certain types of questions, we want to make sure that we are addressing more of those issues. When we revamp the website, we want to make sure that we're doing it in such a way that meets the needs of the people. We can have some really neat options on there, but if they don't serve our major problems, it makes no sense in doing them. So we are getting to be more data-driven, and it's a discipline, and it also has to do with, an overall feeling that we want to make improvements, not just sustain the business model. And that's a change we've made in the office.
Then kind of going off of what was earlier discussed, we just want to work to continue to meet all of our milestones for our various IT upgrade projects and make sure we continue to progress and stick that landing effectively. One recent project that we've started working on is trying to reduce our undeliverable mail. We send out over 1 million mail pieces each year, And in the past, the USPS would destroy 90% of the undeliverable mail. We would never get to see it. Sometimes taxpayers would write, hey, I don't live here, please forward it to this address. We just never got a chance to go through that. So we recently made a policy change to have 100% of the undeliverable mail sent back to our office, so we can go through them one by one and try to have the most accurate mailing list possible.
We're not sure we're going to get through every one of them, but we figured if we don't at least try. But it's funny, the first year I was here after the bill went out, about a month later, it's almost like the salmon run. We send all the salmon out, and then like 1,000 or 2,000 would make it all the way back to my office, despite the fact that we had all these things to stop it, including the United States Post Office saying, you won't get any of these, we'll destroy them for you. And so we were getting them back. And so we were leafing through them, and John Lewis, who used to be the Maricopa County financial officer, I put him in charge going, hey, dig through it and see what you have, and then call the post office and that sort of stuff. And he said, we're losing a lot of data here. We are not, a lot of people are trying to help us do a better job, and we're throwing it away. And so we then decided that we were just going to cancel all the services that keep the mail from getting to us. And so if you get some to your office, please send it to us. But we're going to go through it the best we can, and everybody's job, including mine, to separate it out and pick the stuff out that the low-hanging fruit. You know, let's get the low-hanging fruit this year. Maybe next year we'll try something trickier, but we've decided not to ignore the public when they try to help us do a better job. And so we're going to bring it home. And we might come back next year and go, well, that was a really stupid idea, and I'll tell you 10 reasons why. But until we figure out otherwise, we're going to make an effort to do a better job.
And we have worked to consolidate our inboxes and streamline that process for email. But additionally, what we want to work on going forward is to kind of create more standardization with that correspondence, have standard practices, have standard responses to different types of inquiries so we can most effectively respond to the constituents. And then as Treasurer Allen alluded to, not only do we want to utilize our own data to a greater capacity, but the Star Center data has been a great resource. It's really a barometer to what's going on with our office, the most common call types. When people are asking about a certain thing over and over again, that's our cue to look into our processes and see if there's a way we can reduce that question in the future. Additionally, we are working on updating our website, which we'll touch on in a later slide. The project is referred to as eGov, but what we really want to do is make our website much more user-friendly than it currently is. We are also working to look for new opportunities to diversify our investment portfolio. Interest rates have been great, so we're continuing to monitor the trends in the market, but our first focus will always be on the security of principal and make sure that we are effective stewards of this money, because this money goes out to the different taxing jurisdictions such as schools and other local governments. Then finally, we are going to do our best to recruit for difficult to fill IT contractor positions to ensure the success of our IT system upgrades. As the assessor's office alluded to in their presentation, it's a challenging labor market, and finding these effective IT resources can be a challenge, but they're absolutely vital to us having a successful project.
And also, we're looking for some contract help. And because we only seem to secure people through ACRO, unless you can come up with an extraordinary circumstance. I think we should lower the bar on those extraordinary circumstances, because by the time I get through all the wants of procurement, I'm missing out opportunities of people that are outside of the mainstream. It's just a very competitive market, and so time matters. And so I would ask the board to look at maybe easing up a little bit on who our vendors are. But that's a discussion we could have outside of this, but it has been a challenge. We could spot somebody and we say, oh, we'd really like to have them. But because we haven't fully exhausted a search that we know is going to be fruitless over here, we can't jump on a qualified candidate who could fill it as a contract. It falls in. If I was just hiring somebody, it's so much easier. But if I'm on a contract, it ends up being a lot tougher. And so it's something I think we need to iron out a few of the speed bumps. And some of the speed bumps are there for good reasons. So I think higher level approval is perfectly acceptable to me. It's just one of those things where you go, we have to make an avenue so that when we see talent, we can grab it.
Going on to our budget request, as Treasurer Allen said at the beginning, it's a pretty simple one. We are requesting no above base funding in the general fund. We're requesting no new capital funding. We are simply just asking to continue to carry forward any unspent monies from this current fiscal year into FY24. Then finally, we are requesting a $400,000 mailing contingency. This has been part of the county budget since fiscal year 2021. For anyone watching this, a contingency isn't part of the department budget. It's simply something we could request to have transferred into our budget in extraordinary circumstances with the vote of the Board of Supervisors.
Stamps are expensive. You guys run for campaign, you know, the most expensive thing in a campaign is the cheapest thing, a stamp.
Volume.
Yep.
We wanted to provide an update for our budget request from last fiscal year. One of our items was $500,000 in an ongoing appropriation increase to our general fund operating budget. This was the OET consumption model. Basically, we had a lot of servers and items in our computing environment that were going out of support, and we were faced with a choice. We could either purchase new equipment or work with OET and utilize their existing infrastructure. While this was a $500,000 annual cost to go with OET's system, it ended up being an estimated savings of $2.5 million over 5 years compared to what an internal capital purchase would have been. We have recurring meetings with OET to discuss the status of this. Currently, we're having our environment being migrated into the private cloud. Things are going on track, and everything is meeting our business needs.
It's always hard to ask for a $500,000 increase in your budget so you can, in the background, save $2 million. But it always looks bad. But OET brought this to us. It was a very good idea. We jumped at it. And so I thank Ed, and we're enjoying the results of it so far.
Okay. Then the final leg of our presentation is just to provide an update on our various capital improvement projects. The first of which is our property tax software update, which is our largest item. The multi-year budget for this project is just under $36 million, and we've spent approximately 2/3 so far. This is our biggest project by far. This is the whole property tax system, so over 1.8 million parcels. We have information such as everything we need to produce the tax roll, the property tax bills. When people make property tax payments, this is the system it goes through, and we ensure that payments are timely and track delinquencies through the system. And finally, we need to be able to effectively interface with the assessor's AA gamma system and make sure we're receiving that data as effectively as possible.
And when I came in, I had 5 directors of different departments, and I got it down to 3. And then I added someone again in IT, someone at the very top. I did that out of my own budget. In other words, I was able to take my own vacancy savings and other positions and kind of combine it and stuff like that. Because although I have a very good and competent IT team, it's hard to stick the landing on these softwares, especially as a government agency. We think that we're IT savvy, but it worries me. So, you know, you over time have provided us with what, $48 million in this IT project over the years, and we're down to the last 11 million, and we're getting to the point where really the stuff the public sees the most is coming up. And I just want to make sure we stick the landing. We've had a great routine, but you're not going to make gold unless you finish off well. And so I brought in James Moore, who was one of our subcontractors, but has done a great job of focusing the team to run through the line. And so I have great confidence in the people who've been doing the work And now I have a great confidence that the vision will go through and deliver the product in which you guys paid a lot of money for, a lot of money. And so I appreciate that, and I'm trying to be a good steward of it. And so I'm putting my investments in my office where I think you guys would want it. And that is the forward-facing sort of IT stuff that makes the county look good or makes it look bad.
Okay, well, and certainly the interface with the assessor's office would be key.
And, you know, and their new project has had a few hiccups, but we're a team. They're my sister agency. We've been working these little things through. You know, we were working on some address things before they think. We've also engaged Amazon Systems to look at the three of us, the assessor, the recorder, and ourselves, to see if there's any synergies or systems that would help the three of us, even though we have quite different software. They're doing an appraisal of that right now, and they're going to come back to us and stuff like that. We're all thinking outside the box. I'm telling you, I don't view any problems of theirs being insurmountable or anything, and I know I'm going to have my own problems in the future. So we got to rally around and make sure that we get through these little glitches and get it done. So you're not getting any complaints from the treasurer's office about anything, because this is the nature of new software. And so whatever's little things have popped up, and they haven't been catastrophic by any means, can be fixed, will be fixed, and they'll be fixed either at our end, his end, and eventually the data will populate itself correctly. And so, and it's not incorrect right now. It's just glitchy.
Mr. Chair. John, do you have an estimate on when this project's going to be done?
Yes, I do. But I'm going to, until we get a little closer, I'm going to keep it under my hat because
We're talking about fiscal year 2024. Will it be
Yes.
during fiscal year 2024?
some of it, yes. The problem is that all the things that could hold it up are coming up. So in this quarter, I will have a much better idea whether the dates that we are using internally are realistic. But I know if I give you an exact dollar amount and exact date, I will miss both those. And so I'm stewarding the money very carefully, and I'm hoping to have a little left when it's over to say, woohoo. But to tell you the truth is, I'm very concerned because I am not a software engineer. I have 3 sons who are software engineers, so they talk down to me all the time. But I do not know the exact answer. So in all caution, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up.
Okay.
But we're getting there.
Okay. Thank you.
I left it off the presentation. You think you'd...
That's why I asked.
Several fiscal.
Don't forget, though, he also estimated his presentation to be at 15%. We are over that.
Thank you very much.
We're in the closing stretch. So a couple of fiscal years ago, the Altus project was expanded by $10.5 million across 2 appropriations. This was to address other components such as OnBase, which we have completed, but also our data warehouse and our website. We're finishing up with making updates to our website. We're working with user interface, user experience experts to make sure it's an intuitive website. And the way it's laid out is following industry best practices and that our constituents will be able to use it easily. Then finally, in fiscal year 2022, we received a $4 million appropriation to upgrade our accounting software. We are replacing Microsoft Dynamics, which is going out of support, and we looked at potentially using Microsoft Dynamics 365. However, after complete evaluation from our IT staff, we determined it would be best to integrate it with our property tax software. So rather than having 2 entirely separate systems talk to one another, they're all connected in one overall environment. This will allow for journal entries, the general ledger, chart of accounts to be tied in with property tax and tied into a parcel. So we think this will really streamline our operations in a logical manner. And with that being said, Mr. Chair, members of the board, that concludes our prepared remarks, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Further questions for the board?
Mr. Chairman, no questions. I just want to thank Treasurer Allen for the great work, and Jordan, great presentation. And just want to appreciate the comments that you made about the ballots and how detailed you were and how secure and safe they are and how transparent you are. So thank you so much for everything, but especially on that.
Very good.
Thank you.
Bill, good? Jack?
Bill's my guy.
Bill's your guy.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us today. Okay. Next up, for the Recorder/Elections Department, I would like to call up Stephen Richer, and if you don't take that hat off before you get here, you will get some demerits. Yeah.
Treating you differently than he did Eddie.
I will say that I can't believe you're using that to cover up that wonderful haircut of yours.
Yeah, that wonderful haircut that is much discussed on the internet.
Welcome, Recorder Richer.
Appreciate it.
Are you flying solo, or are you going to bring anybody up?
Scott and Ray are coming up here for this part 2.
Okay, for part 2. Very good.
Fire away.
Fire away.
So this is really, for you guys. So if I'm talking about stuff that you don't need information about or talking too long about something, feel free to interrupt me.
Okay.
If you have further questions about something. Oops, sorry about that. If you have further questions about something, obviously let me know. Okay, so as you know, the Recorder's Office is a bit different than John and Eddie, the assessor and the treasurer, in that we have lots of buckets. We have the 1,000 budget, which is our operating recurring costs. We have the 1,001 budget, which is for one-time appropriations. We have the surcharge 236 fund. We have the ELE budget for election administration costs. We have the ELCO budget, and we have the ELC1 budget. So it's a lot of different little pots of money, but what I'm going to be talking about is our budgets 1,000 and 1,001. I'm responsible for all of these budgets, but Scott and Ray are going to present on the ELE1 budget, and most of which pertains to boards-related responsibilities for in-person voting and for tabulation. As you will see, new printers, new warehouse management system, new site books, but there are also a few items in that budget that are used by both sides of the House and that are early voting specific. So this tees up, I think, 2 necessary caveats or predicates for this presentation, and the first is that this budget is built on the existing elections operating agreement, and we're talking about that, I think, in a week. So obviously, if that changes, then some of these budgetary needs, positioning would change as well. And the second is that this assumes that we're in the same facilities as currently, and if that changes, then obviously some things would go away and some things would become new. So just 2 predicates. All right, slide 3. As you know, the Recorder's Office is a revenue generating office. In fiscal year 2019, the state legislature increased the longstanding recording fee from $9 to $30, and as a result, in the prior 3 fiscal years, we have contributed on average about $30 million to the general fund, and that's just the number of recordings multiplied by 30. Now that has gone down materially, and it's one of the things that we want to talk about. But both with respect to the previous fee and the current fee, the surcharge, which is that 236 fund, the Recorder's Office has been able to draw on $4 out of every $30 for a recording fee. But that fund is diminishing, and in December 2022, we actually had our lowest recording volume in the last 10, 15, 20 years, so in terms of number of documents. So if you take just simply the raw number of documents, multiply it by 4, then that's the surcharge fund, and so that's going out of it. So of the 2 themes for this presentation, one is moving stuff out of the surcharge fund such that we can keep it financially solvent and moving it into general funds. And then the other theme is just bringing us into compatibility with other county departments and county agencies. So I'll talk about that and just standardizing things. All right, page 4, the next slide, touches on those, gives you a few of the numbers. As mentioned, covered that. Then we can go to page 6. All right, the first item there is cubicle refresh and server room decommission. Cubicle refresh is an example of something that if we may change our space, then obviously we wouldn't need something like that. Server room decommission, we are actually still housing a lot of the servers that the Maricopa County Recorder's Office and Elections Department use in that West Court Annex. This is contrary to best practices, so we've been slowly migrating all of our servers away from the actual West Court Annex and into Iron Mountain Phoenix and Iron Mountain Scottsdale. That's consistent with what the rest of the county does. The assessor does that, the treasurer does that, OET does that, this board does that. The reasons for this are just that it's ill-equipped to house those servers. We do not have server specialists on hand. We don't have a long-term redundant power source. We do not have a redundant internet source. And the servers are housed in the middle of an old, hard-to-access building that would be problematic if there was any sort of incident. And so we are increasingly migrating to the cloud and to both the Iron Mountain facility in Phoenix and Scottsdale, as mentioned. And so this is just to properly decommission those servers and hopefully get out of the server business by the end of this next calendar year, hopefully into the next fiscal year a little bit. All right, so that's the first issue. And then regarding domain migration. So we are currently on a domain island as the Recorder's Office and Elections Department. We are the only one that is using a Microsoft Enterprise version, whereas everyone else is on Microsoft Government Cloud. That's the board, the treasurer, the assessor, the clerk, you guys are all on Microsoft Government Cloud. So this creates compatibility issues with everything from Office 360 to ShareFile to OneDrive. So for instance, if I wanted to share my calendar with Bill such that he could see, I don't know, everything that I'm doing, I couldn't do that with you, but you could do that with Assessor Eddie or something like that. So some compatibility issues, but more importantly, that government-based domain is more secure, has better longevity, has built-in protections, and it has built-in reliability. I think this is called FedRAMP in the industry, and so we want to move on to that. Again, this goes to the theme of being on the same page as everyone else in the rest of the county. All right, next slide, unless there's any questions, and unless this is adding no value. You tell me. All right, we'll continue on then. All right. Salesforce, as shocking as it may seem, we do not currently have, oh, whoops, one more, thank you. Who's doing that?
Oh, thank you very much.
As shocking as it may seem, we don't currently have a customer relationship management system. This means that if Jane Doe writes into our office regarding a question and then we try and solve it and then writes back 2 weeks later, then we don't have a way of pulling up those notes for Jane Doe or easily pulling up that file. This is something that all major companies does. I'm sure that all of the companies that you guys are affiliated with have a CRM, and this is something that we would like to move our office to better enhance the customer experience. We've listed Salesforce here because in addition to being one of the best products on the market, it is currently being used by the assessor, and the STAR call center is starting to integrate it. We would build off the existing STAR contract, and if we use that same system, we can easily share notes with both the STAR Center, with the assessor, and I think eventually the treasurer as well, such as if somebody had questions about something in the property vertical, for instance, they would record it with us, maybe have a phone conversation with us or an email exchange with us. Those notes would then be available for the assessor to pull from his Salesforce module such that he could immediately pull up that property parcel and see what types of issues that individual has been dealing with previously. I'm fully supportive of Assessor Cook's vision. If the county chooses to go that way, I think it would be fantastic if everyone in the county was on the same CRM and we were able to track customers across platforms, such that if they had a question about animal care and control or about environmental quality, we could then pull that up in our notes. We could enter our notes as a recorder's office. So that's certainly something that I would be on board with if that's something that the board considers in the future, but I think we have hopes to do that as a STAR team, at least over the next few years, if not, really get that going such that we can at least share information within that property vertical of record, then assess, then tax. All right, so again, standardizing across Maricopa County. Open access, sorry, one back. Perfect, thank you. We received almost 1,500 public records requests last year. That represents a tenfold increase in the number of annual public records requests from just a few years ago. This is incredibly burdensome, and it doesn't include the ones that are propounded on you guys related to elections, unless it just relates to elections materials. But if they're asking for Clint's communications regarding elections, so I know that you guys have had a lot too, but for our small team, that represented a significant increase. So we're not asking for additional personnel, but we are asking for a better system, and that system is called Open Access. And the reason that we came to this system is because it's a system that's currently used by the county attorney's office, and I know that they're looking to increase the size of their public records office a lot, but we are just looking to get on that same system. It's important, one, because it's a really good system, but two, because so many of our public records requests are viewed by the county recorder's office, or excuse me, the county attorney's office before we send them out. You guys know that so many of the things have to have Joe's eyeballs on them before we just send them out into the world, especially right now, and especially with the contentious nature of that. So this would mean that we don't have to email back and forth any of these things. They can just plug right in, open up the same system. Importantly, also, this would allow a lot of things to be self-service. So if somebody wanted the VM55 file, rather than always having to go run a batch report and then email it to that person or load it into a share drive for that person, somebody could just go on, fill out the public records request form, and then be able to download it themselves, such that it had no involvement on our side. And we think that that would really help the process. All right, so any questions on that? Okay, next slide then. And next slide. Perfect. All right, so that first item relates to what I was talking about previously. That Fund 236 is the surcharge fund, and we would want to move that into the general allotment fund, because again, we suspect that if these trends continue, our surcharge fund will be significantly reduced, and we want to keep that financially solvent. And then going to the second one, security. The security request reflects the expanded number of demands and breadth of demands being put on our lead security manager. I think some of you know that, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys about this, but the FBI just recently arrested somebody else who was targeting me, who I wrote down this quote because it was particularly good. I want to throw that Jew in the oven so badly I can taste it. So that actually came about because someone on our team, Melissa, found that in a perfectly pleasant message board, and then found out some of the other stuff that this individual had said, including to Tom Liddy, and that resulted in a few weeks later the FBI arresting that individual. We've asked a lot more of them. They have to scan a lot more stuff. I don't foresee that going away. I'm sure you guys don't foresee that going away. So that's just something that we wanted to add to enhance the team and to recognize the expanded role that they're doing. All right, next question, or next, yeah, thing. Perfect. On to recording. I'm very excited to spend 2023 digging into some of the improvements on the recording side of the operations. The first, our title alert system, is something that you, Chairman Hickman, have asked me about, as well as some of the other members of the board. And so increasingly people are worried about title fraud. That is, people recording fraudulent documents on a piece of property, thereby clouding title or just fraudulently conveying something. So to help with this, we wouldn't become a law enforcement agency and we wouldn't weigh in on what things are lawful or not, but we would just set up essentially a Google alert system whereby you can key in certain keywords and then you would get notifications by email or by text whenever those words are triggered, such that you could put in grant or grantee, and you could see potentially if something was recorded against you or if that you were seen as conveying a piece of property, such that you could get an alert, and then it wouldn't stop that because we still have to record documents so long as they meet all the specific statutory requirements, but at least you could immediately take action. You could alert the Attorney General and you could try to reverse that as soon as possible. Senator Wendy Rogers actually recently introduced a bill to make this a requirement of the counties. Fortunately, we've already gotten headway on that project, and it's something that we hope to have in place in the first half of this calendar year. So we're excited about that. Yes, sir.
Is that based on another county talking about the need for this, or did she?
The only county that has it currently is Yavapai County, whose recorder recently came over to Maricopa County and is now director of our recording services, Leslie Hoffman. It's something that we've been increasingly aware of and starting to pop up in more and more jurisdictions. We don't want to get behind on the curve, and so that's something. Why Wendy Rogers introduced it, I think it's just becoming, the news media has run a few stories about title fraud. Increasingly, we have people write in saying, what do you recommend for this? Right now, we send them out to third-party providers, which are of varying degrees of accuracy, but you have to pay for those. And so this would be a service that we would provide just by typing in the details in your emails or your text number that you want it sent to. Good? All right, great. The next one is on-base document management system. So another sort of surprising thing to me is we don't currently have a document management system. We currently save all of our files, including the millions of recorded documents, on a network drive that is then backed up on remote servers. But no real company does this in terms of saving everything on the network drive. And in fact, when working with the assessor's office, they have to pull things off of our network drive and then put it into a recording or a document management system. So when we record a document, we put it in our F drive, then the assessor to then make it compatible with the stuff that they do, and they takes it and then copies it over to their document management system, and they do that hundreds of thousands of times every single year. Obviously not terribly efficient, and they are ahead of us in where we should be in terms of having a document management system. Anyways, we chose this one because this is what the assessor's office uses and the treasurer's office uses it as well. And so they would just automatically have those documents there, so there would be no need for recopying those. And it just, like I said, brings us into line with where the rest of the county is at, makes us more compatible, and hopefully brings us into the 21st century. Good? All right. RDIS application. So much as we have managed to do with the voter registration database, this is an attempted redesign of the back end for the for the recording database. And so this is the back end for our recording system. This is a homegrown system that's about 15 years old at this point. It's an in-house system because there really were no third-party providers of recording systems prior to about 15 years ago. And so now there are quite a few, and so we would go get one that's off the shelf, such that it would have the new patches, have the new designs, have the new bells and whistles, and it would allow us to have a better platform for recording our documents, and then it would allow us to better serve some of our repeating customers like Zillow and Redfin, who are making requests of every single document that's recorded every single day, such that they can put that up. And it would allow us to better serve our main customers, which are the title companies who have been asking for something like this. Good. All right, and the last one on there is recorder websites. So as you know, we under the previous administrations, everything was housed under the recording website. So if you went to get something related to elections or something related to voter registration or something related to recording, you would have to go to the Maricopa County Recorder's website. We all thought that that didn't really make sense because even though that's how the things are currently housed, our constituents don't necessarily think of recording documents and voting in the same breath. So we moved all of that stuff, the voter registration stuff, the early voting stuff, the in-person stuff, the results stuff, into hopefully what you guys are proud of as a nice new website, and that makes all that stuff more accessible, makes everything easier to find, makes it much more user-friendly. And so we hope to replicate that on the recording side with the same broad themes, and then also with some accessibility features that will hopefully make it easier to search our millions and millions and millions of recorded documents, such that we have to spend less time helping people sort of navigate through that process. And so it'll be a big lift. The company that we worked with for the elections website we really liked, and so we've already started the conversations with them, and it's going well. We've already started sketching out some of the wireframes, and yeah, I think we're happy with it. All right, next slide. And those are the one-time costs associated with it. And then I'm actually going to go 2 more slides over. Okay, and the last thing is I've mostly been talking about how to catch us up, how to standardize us with other county departments, or how to get us to where I think we should be with something like a document management system or a customer relationship management tool. But this is one that I think would get us on the cutting edge. And this is something that we're doing with the assessor. So we're going out to a joint RFP, and this would be able to read information off of documents. So whether it's a recorded document or whether it's a voter registration, it would be able to read that document and automatically categorize it. So if you recorded a document, it would be able to tell who's the grantor or grantee. Right now, every single time somebody records a document, we actually manually enter that. So we look at the document, it's digitally recorded, and then we type in who is the grantor, who is the grantee. So that's problematic for a number of reasons. One, because it just takes a long time, and then two, because there is, as we know, there's more room for error when humans are retyping stuff than when a computer is just grabbing it. But excitingly, what this could also do is it could read handwriting in paper form. So we get a lot of voter registration forms, especially right before a general election. And so this would help us scan that in. Right now, if we get a paper registration form, we're typing in all that information again, and all it takes is one Social Security mistype to sort of to cause you have to go back and loop on that. So this is something that we're excited about. I think it also would have really, really positive effects on all three of our offices in the property vertical, and would put us at the cutting edge in terms of a recording and voter registration office. So that's the shtick. I want to thank Berta and Richard because they have and their team. We've had a lot of unexpected developments. We've had a lot of excitement over the last 2 years, and even before I was here 3 years, and they've been able to keep this office in financially good position, even with all those sort of changes in the waters, and I really appreciate that. And they did the lion's share of the work on this, and I know that they'll be communicating with your chiefs and with the budget office and all that good stuff later. So thanks to them, and then I will hand it over to Ray and Scott when you guys are ready for the ELE1 budget.
Mr. Chair. Stephen, thanks for the presentation. Great presentation, as always. Totally agree with adding Salesforce. Makes perfect sense. And all of these. And I understand the nature of what's going on with the surcharge fund and the decreasing revenues. Do you happen to know what the current balance is in there?
I do not, no.
Okay. Yeah, I'd just be curious, but just makes a lot of sense. Get
I
out
bet
ahead
Richard
of that.
does.
Yeah.
2.2 million at the current rate of based on what we're spending versus the money coming in. The fund would be at zero on December.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pretty remarkable drop off. Fortunately, that means we've been able to go back, and we have digitized and refreshed about 100,000 documents that were in our historical archive. We have about 900,000 more that were never digitized and made fully searchable on the internet. So with the added capacity that the team has right now, just because the recordings are down so significantly, that's what they're working on. And then as well as this title alert program, which I think will be it's just a nice thing, and I think it will be a win for the county. And it's something that, even though I think it sounds more ominous than it is in reality in terms of the number of people who are doing it, it gives people a peace of mind.
I totally agree. Well, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Clint.
I love your chapeau. Let's go.
Anything else?
No, are you?
I can stay up here.
I will go ahead and stay up here. And if I could get our two elections directors to come up for their side of the budget. Appreciate you guys being here as well today. Very important topic that we seem to run into every day, the elections.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to be here.
Great. And Ray?
And just as a point of note that if you've ever read my emails, they're quite verbose. So we did rock, paper, scissors, and Scott will be doing the presentation to limit this, but I will be here to answer questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Ray.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for your time this afternoon. I will be going over a few different.
Oh, I'm sorry, but Scott's going to do the speaking on this one. Do you want me to?
I can run the clicker.
I thought you, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm happy to run the clicker.
Okay.
Just give me a hugely ostentatious hand gesture.
All right.
Yes.
move to the next slide. But I'll be offering or presenting on a few different areas of budget requests for the elections department. Our over the baseline requests relating to the operating budget. And then as the recorder mentioned, we do have an ELE1 budget. Though that budget is specifically to pay for those large county-wide elections. And we do have a few of those coming up in calendar year 2024. So that will be in this next budget cycle. The first one will be the March presidential preference election. And then because the August primary election used to be held at the end of August, it's been moved up to the beginning of August. That means we start incurring some costs related to that in this next budget cycle, in the FY 2024 budget cycle as well. So I'll be covering that at the end of the presentation. So for the operating budget, we can go. There's three different areas I'll be covering. The first are IT-related costs, are in projects. Some are then our some capital-related costs related to our equipment, and then I'll be covering some other types of costs. So three different slides. The first are our IT projects, and we're looking at a one-time request of about $465,000, a recurring request of about $464,000. And I'll break those down into the different types of projects. The first one is a recruiting or a customer service management system. Currently, the elections department relies on two different systems. Just like everyone else in the county, we use Workday, for all of our permanent employees, long-term temps as well. And when Workday was being implemented, we did have some high hopes that maybe we'd be able to roll in some of our temporary recruiting, especially for our poll workers, into that system. And there are some really unique things related to recruiting poll workers that didn't seem to align with implementing that into the Workday system. So we are reliant on the Recorder's Office Enterprise System, what we call VRAS. There's a module within that, what we call the Board Worker System, to currently do the recruiting. But that does not facilitate us to be like doing a first in, first out approach. Right? It is a repository that we keep all of our records for all of our poll workers. And we're able to, like we might have a poll worker that works for us only one day every 2 years, but we can keep records going back for 20 years on this poll worker, what positions, what training courses they went into, all of that type of information. But it wouldn't facilitate us getting thousands and thousands of requests as we're leading up into an election, and then us being able to then distribute those to recruiters to hire them. Right now, we hire geographically using Excel spreadsheets, those types of things. So this would streamline that recruiting process. So I'm not getting those calls from poll workers, hey, I contacted you 2 weeks ago. Why haven't you returned that call? It's because I've assigned it to one poll worker that's working on this one specific legislative district, and that person is overwhelmed. So this would be more of a first in, first out approach, and allow us to develop our current system, but also be able to incorporate some of our central board recruiting into this, and then we'll be able to export information related to this out to Workday for payroll purposes. And one of the other challenges with paying our poll workers, right now we use our sitebook check-in systems for our poll workers to log in, record their time, and that goes into this board worker system. We don't have the ability, like at all of our other facilities, to install a time clock. And some of our poll workers don't have then the application that they can download on their smartphones. So we'd still like to be able to use that sitebook technology to use as a time entry mechanism to record their time.
I'm assuming you all heard from a worker at some point who said, I sent in and I'm very anxiously awaiting and I would love to. Okay. Yeah.
And coming into the 2024 presidential cycle, I reflect back to 2020, and in late August, early September, there was a 2-week period that we had 20,000 different people contact us to work in the presidential election cycle. Now, the vast majority of those just wanted to work one day or a portion of one day, and so they didn't end up panning out. But it just overwhelmed our recruiters' abilities to be able to respond timely to those people that were interested. This would help facilitate that and give us the capacity to respond much more timely. And also handle all that churn that would occur. I went through and did some analysis, and we hired 2,300 poll workers for this 2022 election cycle. Over 400 of those had ended up not working for us, quit for various different reasons. About just 300 of those were just in the last 2 weeks leading up into Election Day. So we just have a high volume, and we need to have a robust system, but a very agile system, and that's what this would allow us to do.
Scott, would that also pull up a history on that person's work for us or for the county? Because I just wonder, I mean, it would be great to go to a system, and because 2 years is a long time. Trying to remember all these names and who was a good worker, who quit during the toughest time. They've already been trained. We spent all that time, and then, well, they just didn't make it to the promised land, which is Election Day, or actually past Election Day for some of these jobs. So would that help us also be able to just jump in and go, well, this is 3 years running where you've been trained, but then you didn't work, so would be able to track that?
Mr. Chairman, we currently do have that information for our poll workers. We don't have that for our central boards. And we are planning to then incorporate our central board recruitment and record retention for those as well. So it would give us that insight into those individuals that, many of those will spend 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks working for us as well through that process. So a lot more insight into recruiting. So, and that is a one-time request of about $50,000 for the implementation of this, and then a recurring licensing fee of $50,000. The next is an election ticketing system. We currently call this election reporting system, but it logs all the different calls that we receive from our vote centers. And we currently have a system that does that, but it doesn't allow us to dispatch information. So for the 2022 election, general election, we had over 2,000 calls come into the field. This is for the entirety of the early voting period, as well as the election day. And 1,000 of those came in on election day. They could be calls that poll worker called out sick, observer on site, could be related that they need more supplies. They've ran out of tamper evidence seals, or they had a printer issue and we need to go out and respond to that printer issue. Right now we keep all that data and it's logged, but when we dispatch out a tech, there's no reporting back to us. We're all having to do that after the fact. So it could be T-Tech went to first location, got called out, went to a second location. They're calling back that information to us. It's either our command center having to enter in the information related to that ticket and close it out, or several days after. Okay, what happened at this ticket? How was it responded to? So this would allow us to send out a ticket using a smartphone. Okay, go, this is your assignment, go resolve this issue, and then they can, using that phone that we would then provide them, that temporary phone, they could then inform us, this is the exact issue, this is how it was resolved. And then we have real-time information of how tickets are being resolved. And then we'd like to also then dovetail that into our warehouse management system. We currently have a system that we're using for inventory of all of our warehouse items. We're looking to, we can potentially customize that and dovetail those together. And then when we are dispatching out a T-Tech and they need some certain supply, then all of that would be integrated and interface well together. Our IT team is currently creating a document, a needs document to identify, is that possible? But they've identified a few off-the-shelf solutions in case that's not. We would like to get that into this budget request so that can be implemented by December, so then we can roll that out for the March presidential preference elections. That's why we're including that. One-time fee for those two systems would be $180,000. Licensing fees recurring $120,000. The next requests are other IT-related items, website licensing. So the recorder mentioned we really put a focus on getting the Elections Department website implemented before the 2022 election cycle. And that comes with some ongoing licensing fees. So we actually budgeted for these, the recorder's office and the Elections Department budgeted for these licensing, but there's some pages that weren't able to be brought along to the new platform that hosts the website. And there's also then the recorder's website that needs to be upgraded that the recorder just presented on. So it means that we're still hosting these old servers and paying for some of these old licensing fees. So eventually, we're planning to have this other cost that's associated with supporting both websites go away. But until we've been able to move the recorder's office fully onto the new platform and the elections department, all the pages, we're paying for both. So there's an ongoing fee of these website fees that we have to pay for both. So that right there is $55,000. And then we're going to do SQL migration. And this is just creating a new platform for us when we're having to make database calls from the website. I want to be real clear. This is not tabulation equipment that we're talking about. It's on its segregated network. It's not connected to the internet. This is our actual website making calls to the voter registration system, right? So a voter needs to find out if they're registered to vote. They'll go through, enter in, say, oh, yes, I am registered, or no, I'm not, or this is what I need to do, find where their closest voting location is. Those types of calls, currently they're having to go, and it goes all the way to Texas and then comes back to Texas. Well, that takes a fraction of a second when we have millions of hits going through an election cycle that can really bog down the system. So we're really moving to an SQL domain change. And that cost would be $55,000 one time, reoccurring $212,000. The next requests are VPN licensing, domain migration fees, and a fresh servicing ticket. So the VPN, that's a virtual private network. That's what our sitebook check-in stations, again, not our tabulation equipment that are at the voting location, a check-in system, how it communicates back to the voter registration system every time a voter checks in. How are those poll workers are entering their time through that secure network connection. I'll be talking about in the upcoming ELE1 budget, how we're looking to expand some of our vote centers. We need to expand the number of VPNs, so that's associated with this licensing as well. We also then, the recorder mentioned that domain migration, going from like if you think about Office 360 to that .gov environment, really bringing us in line with everyone else within the county. So the sheriff's office, the county attorney's office, OET, the board members, that allow us to be able to communicate and share documents much easier, especially when we're using MS Teams and those types of items. So those costs are one time $150,000, reoccurring $12,000. And then this last item is the batch processing system. So this is within, I mentioned that the recorder's enterprise system that the elections department uses. So this is what we call VRAS, our voter registration system. But it's really, there's lots of different modules. The elections department uses it for that board worker system that I described. It uses it for all of our facilities. So right now, it uses a lot of batch processing. So at the end of the night, we need all these batch jobs to run. This is going to introduce automation into those, so we don't have to wait for those end of nights. And sometimes it's actually, person has to kick off that job, right? And then another person has to kick off that next job. So I'll just add more automation into that process that will benefit both the recorder's office and the elections department. So one-time fees associated with that, $30,000, recurring $70,000. So for the IT projects, to recircle back to the opening, was one-time $465,000, recurring $464,000. Any questions related to the IT projects before we go to equipment? All right, so then the next area I'll cover is some equipment. And this is our biggest request, but the biggest request related to this is actually in contingency. So we have a one-time request of $9,728,000, but $9 million of that is related to ballot on demand printers. So in the 2022 election, we've done some internal analysis and review on some of the issues that occurred with our printers. And we identified that one of our printers, the Oki B432, our smaller printer, were some of the cause and some of the factors that contributed to that. So right now we have an external investigation underway, and we're going to request that, based on the conclusions of our internal review, replacing those B432 Oki printers. And that would come to the cost of, as long as this is supported by that external investigation, in the lead time that would be needed to get these printers, we're going to ask that in contingency, $9 million be set aside to purchase these larger, more robust printers, those Lexmark B432s. And that also comes along with a cost of a licensing fee of $450,000 annually.
I have a feeling I have a colleague that wants to ask a question on that one. If not, no? I will. These Lexmark printers, how many will 9 million buy, and will it take care of the number of vote centers, or would these be used to expand the number of vote centers during voting?
So, Mr. Chairman, it would do both. So this would purchase 550 additional ballot-on-demand printers. It would allow us to have 3 printers, these more robust professional capacity
three printers at each site?
At each voting location, and would allow us to expand from the current footprint. So in the 2022 general election, we had 223 vote centers. This would allow us to expand up to 250 vote centers.
So let me ask you, on the preliminary investigation that you guys did quickly to try to find out what occurred, on your preliminary investigation, you found that the Lexmark did not fail, but the Okie Datas did. Is that why we're looking at this particular brand name?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. There was, what we identified were 5 factors. One of them was a 100-pound paper, our 100-pound paper, a 20-inch ballot, interval printing, so that's when you were printing envelopes along with control slips, along with ballots at inconsistent rates, using the Okie printer in combination with, then on election day, you're feeding those ballots into the precinct-based tabulator. So when those 5 events overlapped, that was what our internal investigation identified. So we had Lexmark printers out in the field during the 2022 general election. They were able to handle this, and there were no issues.
Yes.
So
Did that make you want to question something, Tom?
I was already getting there. In the 2022 election, we had Okie and Lexmark. The Lexmark we used, were they C4150, this model?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Galvin, that's correct. So,
okay, so it would be the same exact ones that was used. So basically, like, you know what you're getting with that one.
Mr. Chairman,
it's not like a new Lexmark model.
Yeah, Supervisor Galvin, that's exactly correct. And these were, we identified and started replacing and upgrading our fleet in 2021. And these were the newer printers that we had just purchased in 2021. We did stress testing on them for the jurisdictional elections in 2021, then rolled them out in 2022, and they've worked very well for us.
Okay.
The exact same model.
And then the licensing fee, is that the same, or is that a different amount than what's been a licensing fee before with these printers?
So Supervisor Galvin, that's the licensing fee that we currently have within our contract. Now, there are opportunities sometimes when you go to this higher quantity to potentially reduce that number, but this is the license fee that $750 annually per device, and we might be able to bring that down a little bit through negotiations.
There was a licensing fee with the Okies that would no longer take place?
It was, Supervisor Galvin, it was much lower, that licensing fee.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Gates.
and just to clarify then, or to put a fine point on it, that's based upon what has been found up to this point. But obviously, if Justice McGregor and her team finds other things, you may make a different suggestion to this board.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Gates, that's correct. So we need to ask for the funds now at this point in time, so we're asking for that be held in contingency pending the recommendations and outcome of the external investigation completed by Justice McGregor.
Thanks.
And to put an even finer point on that, these types of hearings and the things that are asked of us usually occur in January, and we learn things. But I want to make sure that is what's going on. This is a contingency asked, but we are waiting to find out an independent look at these printers. Okay, very good. Thank you.
So the next equipment that we're requesting is, I've referenced it a few times during this presentation, but our site book. So that's the check-in station that a voter uses to check in, and it's connected then through that VPN back to the recorder's voter registration database. We're asking for the ability to go to 250 voting locations. So we're going to need some additional site books. They run about $2,000 each, so 250 site books. That allows us to have 8 site books and that's our typical setup at a voting location, plus the contingency in case some of those fail. But we're also then looking to upgrade our existing fleet of site books, the hard drives to a solid state hard drive. They're just much more secure, more reliable when we're delivering these site books out, right? They get jostled around. So, and this will also then extend the useful life of those site books, what we're anticipating for 2 additional election cycles. That's much cheaper. So we're estimating with taxes and shipping about $60 per site book. So being able to upgrade 1,800 site books, that'll cost about $108,000 one-time fee. Then the next item of equipment, we're looking for early voting chairs. So this would be potentially to allow us to expand the number of processing boards within our big room by buying additional chairs, as well as replacing some of our older chairs. So we're looking to buy 100 chairs, and it's pretty impressive how expensive chairs are. So just for 100, it's right around $100,000 just for those chairs. And then also then tables, so additional tables for a big room, but also when we're looking to expand to the number of voting locations to go from 223 to 250, we need more tables for those voting locations. So $20,000, again, one-time fee for those tables. Any other questions about the equipment?
Ray and I will just point out that you could mail out a lot of ballots.
And Central County.
Yep.
So the next area that we'll be covering is what I just call other. So it's various different items that we're requesting. First is the county did roll out rebranding for this year. Now we have a lot of signs out of our voting locations and lots of forms. Some of those we need to update because laws have changed, so we need to get a new, and we've identified, we don't have to replace the entire sign, we just need to replace the cover or the film on that, so that does save money. But once we start making those changes, and nearly every sign and every form has the county seal currently on it. And we're going to be upgrading that to the new brand or logo for the county. We want to be consistent, and integrity is very important. Name brand's very important. So making sure that our forms all have the new county logo, as well as all the signs as well. We're looking at that being anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 for that request. We've talked about, we just went through and upgraded and refreshed the elections department's website. We need to have some, and we don't have the current internal expertise, so we need to have our vendor go through and implement some of that new branding to the website. So that's what this branding request is, $120,000 for one-time request. The recorder mentioned the surcharge fund, and right now the recorder's not only moving some of their IT personnel costs out of that surcharge fund, the elections department is looking to do that as well. So it's actually a current budget item in the current year's budget. We're just asking to move it from the recorder surcharge fund into the elections department. And we're looking at $500,000 for that, and that would then hopefully not cause that fund to be at a balance of 0 come December. We're looking to convert one of our long-term temporary employees, our positions that is in the warehouse, to a permanent full-time position. We have lots of different equipment, everything from ballot boxes, thousands of those that need to be repaired, and looking to have someone with that type of expertise to repair those types of equipment for us in our warehouse. So that's $30,000, and usually that's just the full freight taking that position and adding benefits, retirement, those types of things. And then looking to introduce a management professional assignment across the board for all elections department employees. Recorders just mentioned, some of the threats that he's been experiencing. That's not unique just to the recorder, elected official. We've had various staff members within our department go through those types and receive those same types of threats. We do our work under 24/7 live video streaming cameras, 365 days a year. It's becoming difficult and challenging for us to be able to retain and recruit these employees. So we're looking for a 5% management professional assignment that we can then use to assign and apply to all of our different positions within the department. So our frontline employees all the way up to those managers as well. So that would be $218,000 annually. So those are the elections department operating budget items. The next are moving on to our ELE1 budget, and that's just a financial term for what we use to account for, and if we can go to the next slide, those big county-wide elections. So the first one we're looking at is the presidential preference election. Just 14 months away from today, we'll be hosting our presidential preference election. We are budgeting now, though. We don't know what the future will hold right now. Typically, it would expect that just the Republicans would be participating, but we don't know that for sure. So we're going to budget for and anticipate that all parties would be participating. Now, it's important to note that independents currently cannot participate in the presidential preference election. That's all set for through statute. So we're budgeting for Republicans, Democrats, and as well as Libertarians to be able to participate in this election. Based on that, we look at about 150 voting locations, what we would need to be able to serve those voters. One of the cost drivers really that's been driving, so if you look back to the 2020 presidential preference election, it was $3.9 million. We're budgeting at actually 7.8, a huge increase over that. Those cost drivers, 1.3 million of that is coming from inflationary pressures due to staffing. So the minimum wage has gone up significantly during that time. But we can no longer recruit temporary workers at that minimum wage level. So a perfect example is our drivers. We used to pay $14 an hour. We've had to increase that up to $19 an hour just to get any interest for them to come work for us. So that's one of the increases. We've also, after the 2020 election cycle, we had a large number of voters that signed up to be, at that point in time, the permanent early voting list, now on the active early voting list. But then we had a reversion back to election day voting. But those voters still receive that early ballot. So they still get a packet that we mail to them. They just don't use it or take advantage of it. Or maybe they do use it, fill it out, use it as a sample ballot. But then they also show up at a voting location. So we're essentially creating the cost of not only mailing them a ballot, now we also then have to serve them in person. We do receive some cost savings by having ballot-on-demand printers and vote centers and not having to pre-print ballots at all of these different voting locations. But that's another factor. That's $1.8 million increase. So the mailing costs associated with that, but also just the number of ballots. We're also then factoring in both the Republican and Democratic parties participating in 2020. We just had the Democratic parties participating in that election. So again, not necessarily apples to apples comparison, but that's one of the potential cost factors that's contributing to this increase.
A quick question on the PP. In 2018, both parties, or no, I'm sorry, 2016, both parties participated. Do you remember off the top of your head what was the final cost on that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't, but we can gather that and get that information to you.
And I'm trying to remember this. This was when Helen Purcell was there, and there was, where does the money come from? Who pays for the presidential preference election?
Good question, Mr. Chairman. So the state does reimburse us at a $1.25 per voter. And, I don't know when that rate was set, but quite a long time ago, and I just talked through a lot of the inflationary pressures. I know that in 2020, our cost was $1.66, so even more than the $1.25. But yes, it is a state reimbursed, so they pay for the election, but not.
The county picks up the rest.
That's right.
Well, I remember also in 2016, there was word coming on the onset from the legislature that they might not. They were thinking about making a decision not to. And I remember as we were coming towards that, that was a significant thought, that what happens if the Maricopa County taxpayer doesn't get that money? Because we paid for it. So, you know, we need to continue to keep an eye on that also, because sometimes that makes decisions for us as well. So, look forward to hearing that from you guys if you're starting to hear that a little bit.
So on that point, is this reimbursement statutory, or is it a discretionary line item that has to be negotiated in a state budget between the governor and the legislature? How does that work?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Galvin, the $1.25 per voter is statutory.
Okay.
Anything above that would be discretionary.
Okay.
Suppose it's contingent upon a budget passing, though, to the
Right.
extent that it would need to be negotiated.
Okay, and if I may make a quick comment, whether you're a taxpayer for the county or Arizona, you still live here in Arizona, and Arizona taxpayers are paying for an election for two political parties. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I will say one of the big cost drivers or factors in our budgets moving, and they have been since 2020, but it's communications. Right, so we're budgeting $700,000 line item for communications for the presidential preference election. But a lot of that will go to who's eligible to participate, right? So independent voters, they can participate in an August primary election. So they're very familiar and they build up that habit. The most recent primary election that we had was the August primary. So they're going to roll into our March presidential preference election thinking that they can participate. So we have to put resources into communicating to those voters to let them know who is eligible and what does state law allow.
So these voters are paying for an election they cannot participate in.
Those who are not registered as Republicans, Democrats, or Libertarians.
Yep. Thank you.
Which is only about 35% of our population.
Correct. Oh,
So last item I'll cover is the ELE1 funds for the August primary election that will occur in fiscal year FY 2024. Now we are currently we just budgeted and went through our 2022 election. We're actually finding that we are significantly under budget. I believe we budgeted about $22 million for the August primary and the November general election combined. And we're between 4 and 5. We haven't received all the invoices and bills yet for that election, but $4 to $5 million under budget there. Now, some of that was due to August primary. We had huge vacancies in our ability to recruit central boards and lots of turnover. I mentioned we had 400 people quit in our poll workers. So some of those items are driving down some of those costs. So we're going to go through and do an evaluation, work with the county budget department to right size what this budget request is. But these costs that I'm covering will be a lot more hard and firm costs. So temporary labor that will occur in those early months. So talking May and June timeframe before we get into the August primary. The ballot paper, we have to pre-order that paper so we have it on site so it's ready. We have the stickers that we have to order that will be delivered so we can issue at our voting locations, as well as the instructions that will get sent out to those early voters. The envelopes, mentioned the advertising for, we're finding if we pre-buy the ad time several months in advance, we get it at a significant discount. Also, we'll need to start working with the vendor to develop that advertising campaign early on, so asking for that now for the August primary. Those 90-day mailers that we have to send out, those will go out in May. of next year before we get into the FY25 budget cycle. So these are the types of items. One item here is the tabletop exercise. Secretary of State usually hosts one, but we do one as well, really to identify, okay, these are the types of issues that can occur on election day or during the early voting period. This is how we'd respond to it. So this is a request, $2,245,000 that would then be moved from the FY25 ELE1 budget into the FY24 budget cycle.
Eyes glazed over yet, gentlemen?
Not at all.
Guys are lying. Thank you guys for being here today, and sorry you had to go almost last.
Who's
feeling
after
very
us?
sorry. Leanne and Cindy in the budget department and the agencies under Joy. So know that I would not say yes, I would. We're saving the best for last, but you guys are almost the best for
Thank
last.
you.
So thank you for
As long as I'm ahead of Eddie and John.
Watch out. Accessory is going to punch you.
Just want to say thank you to the recorder,
Yeah.
Scott and Ray. I'm really sorry about this threat that you received, and
I appreciate
as well the harassment of you and employees is absolutely ridiculous. So good luck out there. Thank you.
I have just one question. How much is Joy going to miss these all-day budget presentation sessions?
Is the take the fifth thing?
Yeah. Congratulations on your announcement.
All right. Thank you guys. Okay.
Get to wear my hat now.
Oh, gee. So we'll invite Leanne. Oh, and Val.
And Jen.
Yeah, sorry. Making the
You're first.
eyeball here. So thank you guys.
Can I start with that or? Okay, point it at you, okay.
So, before you get started, I affectionately call you the murderer's row of leadership in your respective departments, and I couldn't be more proud to sit as a chairman today, and I'm sure my board. I commented to Joy all the time just how proud to see you guys at work. I'm sorry, how proud I am to see you at work, leading by example, and it's just a strong county, and to see you guys here and sticking it out through the whole day. And Cindy back there, because I've worked with you for 3 budget cycles now as a chairman. And I just was laughing, Cindy, because there you are, because there's so much work in front of you and your staff to bring us to a point where, so it's not, I think about you guys while we're sitting here with these meetings, listening, I call them pitch meetings, about what the needs are and the wants are and trying to figure that out. But I really appreciate you and your staff working hard to get us to that point, because it's an incredible sum of numbers, but it represents just such hard work through the year, not only of your staff, but all of us that work here for Maricopa County. So thank you for that. And then you guys get to be the leaders of some awesome divisions of people that work and give a lot of their life to the county to run a great operation. So Joy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll be respectful of your time. We have a number of items here. I'm going to kick us off, and we'll share the total of all of our departments, combine the report up through me to you. So this obviously represents about 50 lines of business, and you're familiar with all of the departments. So the total request is almost $30 million. 20.6 million of it is operating, and a little over 9 is non-reoccurring. And you can see by the slide how it's split between general fund and the detention fund. So I'll start off by discussing the departments that report to me directly. We'll start with enterprise technology. Enterprise Technologies request is $3.871 million. And I'll go through the items that, first we'll start with the general fund operating. First off is cybersecurity tools, check marks, cyber warfare training, CyberArk, C-Amplify. These are all the nuts and bolts of expanding our cybersecurity tools. I think you'll agree with me that it's hard for us to apply enough resources in this area. Super frightening what's happening out there in the world, and unfortunately, we've become a target because of elections and other things happening here at Maricopa County. Ed's team has been very diligent, and I feel like we need to give them the tools to do what they need to do. We also have, in general fund maintenance, the CARES Act cybersecurity tools. These were things that were covered by the CARES Act that we used that we really need to keep moving forward, and that's of $1,117,000 that really allows us to make sure that we're safe on that 24/7 way that we're working now and the way we're working remotely as a result of everything we learned as a result of the pandemic. $358,120 for Okta expansion. As you know, as part of the Workday implementation, OET expanded the use of Okta to all of the elected and the appointed offices in that interface, and they're going to continue that effort to make sure that absolutely everyone in the county that works with Workday has access to Okta. I love it. It's saved, the pad of passwords that we all used to have, and, we waited a long time for it, so we're going to make sure everybody can take advantage of that. And then we're asking to put $224,231 in contingency. We're an extremely large Microsoft customer, obviously. They offer a very platinum level customer support. We don't know if that's exactly, if we can achieve the value that they're going to charge us for that, but we'd like to continue that analysis. They provide, direct customer service support at a higher level to some of their customers. And so we'd like to have that money placed in contingency while Cindy and her team works with OET on the analysis of whether that's the proper tool for us to be supported by. And then in general fund, non-recurring, $308,892 to continue funding our OET project managers. That's a one-year allotment. We don't plan for those positions to go away per se, but we really need to take a deeper dive in what constitutes project management, what constitutes a project, how does that model work, are they properly sized for all of the projects that are going on all the time, and so we've begun that analysis, and OETs continue to provide more information. So we'd like to fund those for another year while we continue to do a deeper dive on the costs and how we identify a project and what those project managers work on. ServiceNow customer expansion, $105,000. OET uses ServiceNow to manage their customer service activities. They want to expand those modules to allow for some configurations associated with Workday and to enhance their customer level support. So that's for a ServiceNow expansion. These digital initiatives, you heard a lot about OnBase over and over and over again. OET has continued to do a heavy lift on, applying more of that, and we're hoping, at least I'm hoping, that maybe we can absorb some of the costs that you heard of from the electeds to continue that OnBase onboarding as part of this digital initiative that I think started 2 chairmanships ago for you, Supervisor Gates. Yeah. So, but to work in this digital environment, you've heard why these kind of efforts are so important. And then in contingency, we'd like to request another $400,000 for endpoint management software that helps with the task where we have all of these new devices that are out there. The phones, we're all giving up our desktop phones. Everyone has laptops, docking stations. Well, you've got to keep those patched and updated all of the time. And so these are the tools. They believe they need $400,000 for these tools. This is another item, though, we haven't drilled down enough to know for certain exactly if that's the right amount or how we're going to achieve all that. But I think it's Ed's recommendation that this is about the number that he'd be looking for. And then facilities management, I think poor CJ has been against the back wall during all of this because he never knows when he's going to be mentioned for some facilities improvements as the electeds present. But, and CJ's operation has really been a victim of escalating costs across all of their lines of business, and a lot of these things relate to that. So in general fund operating, they're asking for $238,565 for 2 trade specialists and one trade generalist position. We, as you have almost 390,000 square feet of new space that we will be occupying in FY24. And so they really think they need these positions to support that. And they will pretty much be in the Southeast Regional Facility as well as the Public Works West regions where we're adding a bigger footprint. Repairs and maintenance supplies, they're requesting $380,576. A lot of this is purely because of inflation of goods prices. This is really what they've seen based on what they saw last year, and then what they expect what they saw as actuals as well as an increase. So I'm afraid you're going to hear that a couple of times here again, that just it's an increased cost of doing business for CJ and his folks. Repairs and maintenance services, an increase of $1.4 million roughly. Third-party providers for repairs and maintenance for county buildings has affected these contracted billings. They're seeing those billings go, frankly, quite high. We are getting ready to rebuild the custodial maintenance contract. I think we anticipate, given what wages are and what others have seen, we're going to see a significant increase in custodial services, not to mention we are adding square footage. And then utilities, another $864,925 based on what they're seeing in the market. We know APS 5%, SRP 4%, just municipal utilities, Peoria 3%. That bleeds through to us, and we have to pay those bills. So that's what CJ is estimating will be needed. Oops, I blew it. Sorry. What have I done? Oh, I got into your slides. How far off did I go? No, that's human services. I'm sorry. I should probably just retire, huh?
Don't say it.
I quit. And then they actually are offering $310,829 in savings from vacant positions and positions filled lower than budget to kind of as a debit against some of those requests. Other supplies and services, $71,229 as a small increase in general supplies like safety apparel, technology supplies, real estate allocation, equipment leases, just some of those minor things where we're seeing those increased costs bleed through, and they have, impacted even this year's or last year's expenditures. So, and then in general fund non-reoccurring, they're asking for $100,000 for project management software. It's time to upgrade that backbone system, their project delivery. Environmental tracking software to monitor electricity use and conservation efforts. Utility management software, which is slightly different, also $25,000. CJ tells me they're using a manual system to pay their utility bills, and a lot of that, is not necessary, or, it's open to error, and so he's requesting that. And then service allocation from real estate and one-time repairs and maintenance of $113,124. We'll be decommissioning Animal Care East, the old Animal Care East, and Centennial Way. So this is for just an annual to get them through that year, and then we'll be sunsetting them. We're confident that that's going to be happening this year. And then out of detention fund operating, they're talking about a budget reallocation that can be offset by about $2 million by allocating savings from the detention fund budget. So again, they're offering up a little to offset some of these issues. And then we have human resources. Their request is $982,000. Workday, out of general fund operating, Workday ADP checks, TCP time clocks, and Kano Smart increase. These are just annual increases in cost of doing business. They are about 5% consistently, and those are all very valuable tools to us. Background checks are also going up. Last year we increased background checks by 120, and then the base costs of each are going up as well. We're just doing more of them as we have had a lot of churn, but as you heard from folks like the county attorney's office, we're getting a lot of people on board as well. So that's kind of the cost of doing business there. Biz Library training videos, $15,000 there. That's a 10% annual cost increase. Absence Soft FMLA tracking software. I think this is very important for us to get, so that we're highly accurate with FMLA claims, of which we have many across electeds and appointed departments. That's not a place to make a mistake, and so this software will be the backbone of that operation. Recruiting tools, obviously, I think you know the need for those, but this $35,000 will get a Recruiter Pro seat, which is $10,000 on LinkedIn, which allows you to search and send messages and kind of tease candidates out. 2 job slots on LinkedIn as well at $5,000 in each to kind of highlight our recruitments on LinkedIn and hopefully hook people that way. And then 2 Indeed seats for $7,000, and I think you know what Indeed is, also a good tool for us. And then $13,000 to post on NeoGov's governmentjobs.com. So those are our recruiting efforts. And then $40,000 for, we're hoping our job fair is going to be extremely successful. I hope you all are getting excited about it. We have a number of people who are going to get married that day. So if you'd like to renew your vows, be sure and let us know. But, you know, it's going to be a great kind of county extravaganza, not just, you know, a jobs fair. That's obviously what we want to accomplish, but people are going to get practice interviewing. They can get vaccinations from public health. They can adopt a pet from MASH or animal care. We're just going to kind of showcase everyone and get hopefully everyone excited about Maricopa County and everything we do. And like I said, go home and ask your wives if they'd like to renew their vows, because I'm sure we could fit you in. I'm sure they, but we have had a good response so far. So that's kind of an interesting sidebar. So anyway, we believe that the cost, if that's successful, to do it again next year would be about $40,000, you know, to have it at the ballpark, get all of the amenities that go with that. And then succession planning for $100,000. Last year, we contracted with Mercer to assess and create a development plan for our employees. They worked with 10 of our future leaders that were identified through a matrix by their departments and then nurtured in how they're going to grow their careers. We'd really like to continue that. Supervisor Gallardo has continued us to continue to diversify our executive and management level. It's a great way to do that. I think, you know, we all know there are all-stars out there toiling in, you know, obscurity in our departments. Jen was an example of that. We found her hiding out in flood control many years ago. But, you know, it's a way to tease those people out and make sure that they feel supported, stay with us, and can build a career at Maricopa County. And so $100,000 for those succession.
Did you know you were toiling?
I didn't, you know, I didn't know she was there, and I met her, and immediately you knew that she was a future leader. And, you know, we need to find the next generation of Jen Pekorskis and start bringing them up. So, and then finally, although it doesn't report solely to the county manager's office, ICGIS is requesting $100,000 for hardware and software support for pre-booking 2.0 application, and I guess that's a 24/7 service cost that is more than they anticipated. So we often forget about ICGIS being out there, but they're an important technology component for us as well. So sorry that took a minute, and I will go ahead and turn, Val, I think you're next. Oh, I think, oh, that's right. You're the lucky recipient of animal care now. I forgot. I will take that remote. Okay. See what an all-star you are?
All right, Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much. The over baseline request for animal care and control is 2.811, primarily to help fund the new East Shelter, sustain and improve standards of care, attract and retain staff. And then there's also an ask for an investment into reducing our costs long-term, which I'll cover in a minute. In general fund operating, we are seeking 1.365, of which approximately 235,000 is directly related to staffing and supplies and the move to the new East Shelter. And it, oh, did it not advance? Oh, thank you. Obviously, I didn't learn how to use a PowerPoint. But an additional 545 is for to retain staff if pay for performance is awarded in FY24. We are also have an ask to cover increased costs and central service costs. That is about $331,000 for risk management and $185,000 for central service cost allocation, and then an adjustment for $10,914 for retirement benefit increases. Under non-recurring, we are asking for 1.445. And part of that is for supply costs to help stand up the vet clinic, which is going to be at the East Shelter, which is very exciting. And then investing in technology to digitize our field notices. And also for repurposing some kennel space at Durango. We are not statutorily required to take cats, so we are focusing on repurposing some of the cat kennels into dog kennels to expand our capacity there at Durango. We also, I'm sure many of you have heard, there is a nationwide shortage in veterinarians. And we currently have 5 veterinary positions. We only have 2 filled. And we are seeking $700,000, which is for relief veterinarians that can help spay neuter. In order for us to adopt dogs out, we have to spay and neuter them before they leave. And we need to get the dogs into homes as quickly as possible. And without these relief vets, we would have a very large backlog in dogs waiting to be spayed or neutered. If we can fill vet positions, then we won't need to fully utilize this $700,000. It is approximately 3 times more for us to utilize outside vets than getting vets in-house. We have a very robust program with Human Resources and PIO who are helping us recruit. And I also would like to thank you for approving the tuition reimbursement for veterinarians. We think that is going to make a significant impact in our recruiting efforts. So thank you for that. I also mentioned it's important to get dogs into new homes, but I mentioned that there's an ask to help divert dogs from coming into the shelter. I learned astonishing statistic that in 6 years, 1 unsterilized dog and its offspring can produce about 67,000 additional dogs. And our cost to care for a dog is $40 to $80 a day. So in order for us to prevent our budget from continuing to increase, we are asking for money toward $500,000 for vouchers towards spay and neuter. We think that'll have a long-term impact in keeping our costs down and also have more life-saving impacts, and there's fewer dogs that need homes. And this would be for vouchers that we work with the community to give to people that cannot afford to spay or neuter their pet, and they would take it to a local veterinary clinic for spay and neuter. We are also, and then there's just some additional for county rebranding and some ITC services.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
So has that been attempted before? I thought we've tried that before. Did we have success? We just ran out of money, or what is it?
Yes, Chairman, members of the board, we had significant success, and you can see in our numbers over the years that the number in the population started going down. Some of that money dried up over the past years, and some of the partners in the community, their funding dried up. So that's why we are asking, and we hear from the partners that this could make a real impact now.
So it was becoming routine. It seemed like almost every week, a couple years ago, that we would bust puppy mills. And I haven't heard of one lately. I've wondered if we've given that up or we aren't acting on intelligence in that field. I don't know if you've heard from the sheriff's office, but that would be helpful too. So have you heard anything, Joy?
Mr. Chairman, I haven't, but there's been a lot of public outreach and information about bred dogs, buying, the mall shops. They're not taken as tenants in a lot of areas. There's been kind of a national movement to let people know about, retail dogs essentially. And I think a lot of the information has helped, and people are on the lookout for puppy mills. They know when they see in Craigslist when it's a puppy mill and who to call. So I think there's been over the course of several years, some of that business has declined, frankly.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is great. I'm really pleased to see the $500,000 for spay and neuter. I actually worked on some of that when I was at the city, I think. So the county was probably doing it. I think there's partnering. So great to see that moving forward. So the transfer subsidy total is $1.3 million.
Yes.
That's proposed for fiscal year 24. What is it for the current year? Do you know?
I believe, Chairman, and Supervisor Gates. There is currently, I think it's a total of a 6.9 million in the general fund subsidy. And then this goes in addition to that. I can double check my numbers and get back to you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Please, continue on.
Could you, it's not switching for me. I must have a bad angle or something.
Well, I gotta let go, obviously. Okay, I think we're in the right place now.
Thank you for the ask for environmental services is 1.544 over baseline, and the majority of this request is to expand vector control in response to the identification of a dengue positive mosquito in one of our traps. It was in October of last year. Public Health and Environmental Services did a tremendous job going door to door, well over 300 homes in that area. 2 locally acquired dengue cases were identified during that time. Dengue is carried by the Aedes mosquito. Previously, Aedes was just looked at as a nuisance mosquito, and now it has to be considered a vector mosquito in Maricopa County. And that causes a big increase in our workload to trap, test, and treat. And so the majority of this ask is related to being able to meet the requirements of our new protocol that we've developed with public health to ensure that we are addressing dengue. So under general fund operating, vector control is 28146 for 2 new vector control positions, lab supplies, and then maintenance and fuel for vehicles. Under general fund non-recurring, there is 648,135 for vector control, and that is building out the new lab space and purchasing all of the new equipment that we need for the additional testing that we're going to have to do for the Aedes mosquitoes. It also includes new vehicles for the staff and a new fogger for those vehicles, equipment, and then additional mosquito traps. Switching gears, there is a general fund operating request for waste resources. We maintain 10 closed landfills in accordance with post-closure plans that are approved and monitored by ADEQ. And there has just been inflation, there's been increasing costs in rock and renting equipment and everything that we need to do to maintain those 10 closed landfills from erosion control. We also have worked with FMD to put together a plan for our 6 transfer stations because those transfer stations are aging and there's repairs to hydraulic lifts and guard stations, and that request is for $85,000. There is also a non-recurring request for waste resources for $407,505. We have 2 landfills, Queen Creek and Rainbow Valley, that need major repairs to their cap for subsidence and serious erosion. And that would be a one-time fund to make those repairs. And then Cave Creek is our busiest transfer station, and our road is really deteriorating, and we're at risk of a dust violation if we don't make the repairs to that to that request. The final request is we have a special fund that funds the replacement of our foggers for vector control every year. And like inflation has impacted a lot of different prices, it also has impacted the price of foggers, and that's a $16,800 increase. So I would be happy to answer any questions, and I thank you for your consideration.
Sure, if you trust me. Parks and Rec, all right. They have made an above baseline request for $445,000 primarily to support the Maricopa County Trail system.